The first time I saw him was in the cemetery. The rain had soaked through my coat, and the chill bit at my fingers, but I didn't care. I never did. My solace was in the shadows, in the broken stones and forgotten graves, where the world's noise couldn't reach me. I was sketching an angel statue that had lost its face to time when I felt it, a presence, watching. My hand froze mid-stroke. I turned, expecting to see nothing, but there he was. A man stood by the mausoleum, his figure sharp against the mist. "Do you always haunt cemeteries, or is tonight an exception?" he asked. His voice startled me. It was deep, smooth, and carried a hint of something ancient. I didn't answer right away, I was too busy taking him in. His coat fluttered in the breeze like raven wings, and his eyes, silver, piercing, seemed to cut through me. "I paint them," I finally said, clutching my sketchpad tighter. "The dead. The forgotten. And do they paint you in return?" His lips curved into the faintest smirk. I didn't understand his meaning then, but his words lingered long after he disappeared into the fog. Lucien Valmont became a shadow in my life. I'd find him in the oddest places, the market, the docks, even outside my studio. He was always there when my thoughts grew darkest, his presence like an anchor keeping me from drifting into the abyss. "You're not like the others in this city," he told me once as we walked along the cobblestones. "There's something unyielding about you." I laughed bitterly. "You don't know me well enough to say that." "Don't I?" He tilted his head, and for a moment, I felt like he could see straight into my soul. Lucien was an enigma. He rarely spoke about himself, deflecting my questions with cryptic remarks. Yet, he always listened when I talked, about my nightmares, my art, and the loneliness that had become my companion. One night, as we stood on my balcony overlooking the city, I dared to ask, "Why do you keep showing up? What do you want from me?" His gaze softened, though a shadow crossed his face. "Maybe I just want to see if someone like you can find peace." I discovered the truth by accident. I had followed Lucien to the cemetery again, something I'd done too many times to count. But that night, he wasn't alone. A shadowy figure writhed before him, its voice hissing like steam escaping a kettle. "You grow weak, Lucien," it sneered. "She is breaking you." "I told you," Lucien said, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "I will not take her." The shadow laughed, a sound that chilled me to the bone. "Then she will die like the rest." My breath caught, and I must have made a sound because Lucien turned sharply. His expression was a mix of horror and regret. "Evangeline," he whispered. I demanded the truth, and he gave it to me. He was cursed, bound to an ancient relic called the Obsidian Rose. It fed on despair, and his task was to claim the souls of those who had given up on life. Each soul he took strengthened the rose and prolonged his existence, but at the cost of his own humanity. "And me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "The rose wants you," he admitted. "Your sorrow is different. Powerful. But I won't let it have you." Knowing the truth didn't push me away, it drew me closer. Lucien tried to distance himself, insisting he was dangerous, but I refused to let him go. "You think you're darkness," I told him one night as we sat in my studio. "But even in darkness, there's light. Maybe you just need someone to remind you of it." He didn't answer, but the way he looked at me spoke volumes. Our love grew in the shadows, a fragile thing that defied the curse hanging over us. Lucien taught me to find beauty in the bleakness, while I showed him that even a cursed life could hold moments of joy. But the rose wasn't content to let us be. Its whispers grew louder, its demands more insistent. Lucien began to weaken, the curse eating away at him. We searched desperately for a way to break the curse, combing through ancient texts and seeking out forgotten scholars. Eventually, we found an answer: the rose could be destroyed, but only through an act of pure, selfless love, a sacrifice. "I won't let you do it," Lucien said when we learned the truth. "And I won't let you suffer anymore," I replied. The final confrontation came on a stormy night. Morvith, the entity bound to the rose, appeared in his full, terrifying form. Shadows writhed around him, and his voice was a thunderous roar. "You cannot win," he sneered. "Your love is nothing against me." I stepped forward, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshaken. "You're wrong. Love is everything." I pressed my hand to the rose. A blinding light erupted, consuming Morveth and shattering the curse. I woke days later in my studio, Lucien at my side. The rose was gone, and with it, the weight of his curse. We rebuilt our lives together, finding joy in the simple moments: sunrises over the city, laughter shared over dinner, the warmth of holding each other close. My art became vibrant, full of life and hope, while Lucien found peace in the mundane. Our love had endured, proving that even in the darkest shadows, light could bloom. I thought I knew what despair felt like, but nothing compared to watching Lucien unravel before my eyes. "You need to leave me," he said one night, pacing my studio like a caged animal. His coat was damp from the rain, his hair disheveled. "You don't understand the danger you're in." "Then explain it to me," I shot back. My hands trembled, but my voice stayed steady. "Stop shutting me out and tell me what you're so afraid of." He stopped, his back to me. For a moment, the room was silent, save for the soft patter of rain against the window. "I've taken hundreds of souls, Evangeline," he said finally, his voice hollow. "Maybe thousands. Each one weighs on me, even if I try to forget. I don't want you to be another." I stepped closer, my heart aching for him. "You're not going to take my soul. You don't know that." His voice broke, and when he turned to face me, I saw the torment in his silver eyes. "The rose is stronger than I am. If it demands you, I might not be able to stop it." I reached for him, my fingers brushing against his. "Then we'll find a way to destroy it. Together." We began our quest in the city's underbelly, where forgotten knowledge lingered in dusty tomes and cryptic whispers. Lucien led me to places I'd never dared to go: an abandoned cathedral where shadows seemed to move on their own, a hidden library guarded by a blind old man who spoke in riddles, and the catacombs beneath Eldermere, where the air reeked of decay. In the catacombs, we found a journal written by someone who had encountered the Obsidian Rose centuries ago. The entries were frantic, the handwriting erratic. "The rose feeds on despair, but love can poison its roots," Lucien read aloud, his brow furrowed. "An act of selfless love," it says, "can destroy it." I felt a glimmer of hope, but Lucien's expression darkened. "Selfless love," he muttered. "That's just a poetic way of saying sacrifice." "I'd sacrifice anything for you," I said without hesitation. He looked at me sharply. "Don't say that. You don't know what it would cost." "I don't care." I stepped closer, my voice firm. "You've spent centuries suffering because of this curse. If I can end it, end your pain, then I will." He shook his head, his hands gripping my shoulders. "I can't lose you, Evangeline. Not you." Amid our search, there were moments of joy, fragile but precious. One evening, after hours spent poring over texts in the library, Lucien surprised me by pulling me outside into the rain. "What are you doing?" I asked, laughing as he spun me around. "You've spent too much time in the dark," he said, his lips curving into a rare smile. "Sometimes, you need to feel the rain." We danced in the empty square, the cobblestones slick beneath our feet, the rain washing away the weight of the world. For a few moments, it was just us, and nothing else mattered. Our happiness was short-lived. The obsidian rose began to change, its petals growing darker, their edges curling like ash. Lucien grew weaker with each passing day, his skin pale, his movements slower. "It's feeding on me," he admitted one night as we sat in the dim light of my studio. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for my hand, his fingers cold but gentle. "Promise me something, Evangeline. If it comes down to it, if there's no other way, you'll run. Leave this city and never look back." "I can't promise that." "You have to." His voice was firm, but his eyes were pleading. "I can't watch it take you." The night it happened, the storm was relentless. Lightning illuminated the city in flashes, and thunder shook the walls of my studio. I knew something was wrong when I woke to find Lucien gone. I followed the trail of his presence to the cemetery, where I found him standing before the mausoleum, the obsidian rose in his hand. Its petals glowed faintly, pulsing like a dying heartbeat. "Lucien!" I called out, but he didn't turn. Morveth appeared then, his form a mass of shifting shadows. "You failed, Lucien," the entity sneered. "You thought you could defy me, but you're mine. And now, she will be too." "No." I stepped forward, but Lucien held up a hand to stop me. "Stay back," he said, his voice strained. I ignored him, my heart pounding as I approached the rose. "You can't have him," I said to Morveth. "And you won't take me, either." Morveth laughed, a sound that made my blood run cold. "You think you can defy me, little girl? You are nothing." I reached out and touched the rose. The pain was immediate, searing through me like fire. But I didn't let go. "Evangeline, stop." Lucien's voice was desperate, but I met his gaze and smiled through the agony. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're worth it." The rose shattered, its petals disintegrating into light. Morveth screamed, his form dissolving into nothingness. I woke in my studio, the morning light streaming through the window. My body ached, but I was alive. Lucien was at my side, his hand clasping mine. "You're free," I murmured, tears streaming down my face. He smiled, a true, unguarded smile. "And so are you." We rebuilt our lives slowly, savoring every moment we had. My art changed, becoming vibrant and full of hope. Lucien found peace in the mundane, helping neighbors, tending to the small garden we planted together, and walking with me through the city. Our love had survived the darkness, proving that even in the bleakest shadows, light could bloom. Lucien's words echoed in my mind as I stood in the cold studio. Promise me you'll run. How could he ask me to do that? How could he think I'd ever leave him behind? Every step we took in our search for answers only drew me closer to him. Yet with each fleeting moment of happiness, the fear of losing him became sharper, like a knife twisting in my chest. I clung to his rare smiles, the soft brushes of his fingers against mine, and the way his voice softened when he said my name. But the truth hung between us like a noose, tightening with every passing day. One evening, as we sat by the fire in the study, Lucien stared into the flames, his face etched with an expression I couldn't place. "You'll hate me someday," he murmured, so quietly I almost didn't hear him. "What?" I leaned forward, my heart sinking. "Lucien, I could never hate you." His eyes lifted to meet mine, haunted and distant. "You say that now, but you don't know what I've done. You've seen glimpses, but not the whole truth." "Then show me," I said firmly. "Stop hiding from me." He hesitated, his jaw tightening. Finally, he reached out and took my hand. The connection sent a chill through my body, and suddenly I wasn't in the room anymore. I was standing in a field under a blood-red sky. Around me, people were screaming, their faces contorted in agony. At the center of it all was Lucien, holding the obsidian rose. Shadows coiled around him as he absorbed their despair, his expression cold and unyielding. The vision shifted, and I saw him alone in a crumbling mansion, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He sat in the dark, clutching the rose, his hands shaking. The visions faded, and I gasped, my chest heaving. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at him. "Now you know," he said, his voice hollow. "I'm a monster." I shook my head, my voice breaking. "No, you're not. You've been forced into this. You didn't choose it." "It doesn't matter," he said, pulling away. "The blood is still on my hands." "Then let me help you wash it off," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. Lucien didn't believe he deserved love, but I refused to let him push me away. One night, after a particularly grueling day of searching, he collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. "Why are you still here?" he asked, his voice muffled. Because I love you, I said simply. His head snapped up, his eyes wide. You shouldn't. I'll destroy you. No, you won't, I said, moving to sit beside him. I cupped his face in my hands, forcing him to look at me. You've been living in darkness for so long that you've forgotten what light feels like. But I see the good in you, Lucien. I see the man you are beneath the curse. Tears glistened in his eyes, and he shook his head. I don't deserve you. I leaned forward, pressing my forehead against his. Maybe not. But I'm not going anywhere. The rose grew more aggressive in its attempts to claim me. I started hearing whispers in my dreams, dark tendrils coiling around me, promising relief from my pain if I gave in. One night, I woke up screaming, the whispers still echoing in my ears. Lucien was at my side in an instant, his arms wrapping around me. It's the rose, I choked out. It's trying to get to me. His grip tightened, and I felt his body tremble. It won't take you, he said fiercely. I'll die before I let it. The raw emotion in his voice broke something in me. I buried my face in his chest, clinging to him like he was the only thing tethering me to reality. We're running out of time, he said softly, his voice heavy with despair. When the final confrontation came, I was ready to do whatever it took to save him. The cemetery was shrouded in darkness, the air thick with the stench of decay. Morveth loomed before us, his form a grotesque amalgamation of shadows and jagged edges. You think you can defy me, he sneered, his voice echoing like thunder. The rose will have her, Lucien. And you will watch as she crumbles. No. Lucien roared, stepping between us. Take me instead. Leave her out of this. Morveth laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. You don't understand, do you? Her despair is what will break you. Her death will be your undoing. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. You're wrong, I said, my voice steady, despite the fear clawing at me. Our love is stronger than anything you can throw at us. Without hesitation, I reached for the rose. Evangeline, no. Lucien shouted, but it was too late. The moment my hand touched the petals, a searing pain shot through me, but I didn't let go. Memories of my life flashed before my eyes, my parents, my art, the endless loneliness that had consumed me before I met Lucien. But then I saw him. His smile, his touch, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing keeping him alive. I love you, I whispered, my voice cracking. Light erupted from the rose, blinding and all-consuming. Morveth's scream echoed in the air as his form disintegrated into nothingness. When the light faded, I collapsed, my vision fading to black. I woke to the sound of birds chirping and the warmth of sunlight on my face. For a moment, I thought I was dead. But then I saw him, Lucien, sitting beside me, his face streaked with tears. You're alive, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I reached up to touch his face, my heart swelling with relief. So are you. The rose was gone, and with it, the curse that had plagued him for centuries. In the days that followed, we began to rebuild our lives. Lucien smiled more often, his laughter no longer tinged with sadness. I painted with a newfound vigor, my canvases filled with light and hope. We were free, and though the scars of our journey remained, they were a testament to the love that had carried us through the darkness.